Welcome to the Straight Wrestling Podcast, SWP, episode number 1. Today, guys, I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about wrestling, how I got into it, what it's done for me in my life, stuff like that. This is my very first time. I've wanted to do this podcast for quite a while, about 3-4 years. I've had the name put out. I've done research on podcasts. I've tried to do certain things, and here and there I looked into it. I was very touch and go. I don't think I was really too committed on doing it, but now I'm more committed than ever. So first, we're going to start off with how I became a wrestling fan, how I got into wrestling, and my earliest memories of wrestling. So growing up, my parents never let me watch wrestling. They thought it was too violent. They thought it was a bad influence. I was a hyper kid, so there were certain things that I couldn't do. But I would go over my grandparents' house quite a bit, like the older I got, and my grandpa was a big wrestling fan. He watched wrestling, so every time I was over there, I was with him, I was next to him. He called me his tail, so to speak, because I followed him around everywhere. You know, like when you're a kid and you know what I'm talking about anyhow. Where you follow people around and you're kind of like a lost puppy. But anyways, I think I first started watching it when I was around 4 to 5, which would have been like 2005 or 6. But I never really got into it. Like I didn't know exactly what I was watching, or I didn't start following it until like around 2008, maybe 2009. That's pushing it a little bit. One of my earliest memories of wrestling that I remember seeing live was, I don't know why this pops up. This is just very random though, but when Edge was with Vicky Guerrero and Rey Mysterio came out, Vicky Guerrero, was in a wheelchair, and I think it was like Valentine's Day or something, and I believe it was 2008, where Rey gave her the West Coast Pop, or whatever that move is, when he jumps off the top rope. He meant to hit Edge, but he accidentally hit Vicky Guerrero. But I think it was Valentine's Day 2008 or something, because they had the hearts and all that stuff in the ring. It was kind of red. But yeah, that's one of my earliest memories of seeing wrestling live that I remember. And it wasn't too long after that before I actually started following wrestling, started really getting into wrestling. And ever since then, I've never lost out of it. I know a lot of people will say that they stopped watching wrestling like in their college years or whatever, and then they never got back into it. Or some people I know, they got out of it during their college years and then they got back into it. I never did. I've always consistently watched it. I don't know why, and I don't know what for. Maybe it's the larger than life characters. I don't know. It's something about it pulls me in. And I know sometimes the product is not that great, right? 2010 comes to mind quite a bit about it being not a very good year in wrestling. But to me, an 11-year-old kid watching it, it was one of the greatest things in the world. But looking back on it, the product was pretty bad in 2010, especially, both companies, WWE and TNA Impact. It was both a pretty bad year for them. Some more early memories, though, would be around the same era, around the same time, late 2008, early 2009, was Undertaker. Undertaker, when I was a kid, he was one of my favorite wrestlers, and honestly, he still is. Even though he's retired now, he's still one of my favorites. And I remember he wrestled Great Khali one time, and he was the world champion. Vicky Guerrero was trying to strip him of the world title. He wasn't going to give it to her, so he locked Great Khali in a chokehold, and he started bleeding from the mouth. And I was like, whoa, you know? Because I had never seen anything like that before. And Big Daddy V as well. Like, I used to, I was scared of Big Daddy V, but I couldn't take my eyes off the TV when he was on there. You know what I mean? Like, Big Daddy V is somebody that I will always remember because his size, right, and the way that he matched up to other people. Now that I'm older, we got the WWE Network, or what they call Peacock. I've been able to go back and watch some of these matches, and I know he wasn't the greatest wrestler, but I know that, the memories that I had of him, and it kind of ruined it going back and watching Big Daddy V's. I'm talking about like when he was straight Big Daddy V, like the ECW SmackDown days. I didn't know his like King Mabel and Viscera stuff till after I got older, but still the same guy, different gimmicks. Some gimmicks were good, some gimmicks were bad, but nonetheless, that was that. Another memory was, it may have been the first pay-per-view I ever watched. It's the first one I remember watching. Was 2008 SummerSlam, when The Undertaker chokeslammed Edge through the ring and the Fire came up. I think it was like a Hell in a Cell match or something like that. And I think to this day it still stands out as a great match. The entire show, and it's iffy, but that moment, stood out to me. And we weren't the richest people or nothing, so I don't think I seen a pay-per-view live after that until probably like 2012. I remember in 2012 I ordered the 2012 Royal Rumble, and I was so excited. I had my own money. I spent it on that. I was like 12 years old. I knew the Royal Rumble was great because I had wrestling DVDs at the time. This was around the time where my parents actually started letting me watch it, because they sat down with me and watched it at home, and they realized, okay, it's not what it once was. Because my parents, my dad, he used to watch wrestling back in the day. He doesn't really tell me the time frame, but I'm assuming it was like that early to late 90s era. Because my mom tells me that he'd watch it sometimes. And he even told me that he watched it sometimes. But the late 90s era, like that Attitude Era, it wouldn't have been that appropriate for somebody that was my age at the time to watch. Now that I'm older and stuff like that, I went back and watched the Attitude Era, and honestly, it's not that great, if I'm going to be honest with you. Like, it's a very unpopular opinion, but I feel that, besides like DX and Undertaker and Mankind and Stone Cold and The Rock, I guess you could put Bret Hart up there. I'm not the biggest Bret Hart fan nowadays, which is something that we might get into, as the show progresses. But other than those people, that was the Attitude Era. That was it. Kurt Angle came in kind of late Attitude Era, but, other than that, everything else sucked. No other good matches happened. I remember one match I watched, it was like Goldust and Big Boss Man, and I couldn't do it. I watched an episode from Raw from 1997 one time, and I couldn't do it. Maybe it was like 98, but I just couldn't. To me, it was boring. Now, don't get me wrong. There's some great stuff that happened in the 90s. Like, I will literally say I'm a big fan of 90s wrestling, but not the WWF, like, Attitude Era wrestling. Like, 1994, there was some decent stuff that happened. But, again, different topic, different time to speak on that stuff. But if you've noticed, a lot of my memories that I talked about, my earliest memories, was SmackDown. And that's because, like I said, my parents didn't let me watch wrestling at the time. I'd go over to my grandparents' house, I'd watch it with my grandpa. And it'd be Fridays, Fridays or Saturdays. I'd be able to go over there because I'd spend the night. And yeah, that was really the only show that I watched as a kid, other than Impact and Superstars, because those came on the same day. Like, Superstars was on at 8, Impact Wrestling, TNA Wrestling, comes on at 9. Because I went to like a weird school, especially like middle school age, to where like you'd have 2 Fridays off a month. Like every other Friday we'd have off, but I think we went to school longer than some of the other kids. Like we went to like late June. So I was able to watch those episodes. Superstars, I don't remember much about them, if I'm going to be honest. It wasn't the best show. But I'm older. I've went back. I've watched some of them. And there's great wrestling on there. It's just not a very fond looked upon show because it had lower to mid card wrestlers on there. Like I think a couple of weeks ago, it took me a while, but I just finished watching 2010 of Superstars, and it was a decent year for them. Great wrestling, but the storylines, they weren't there. The storylines were dead. Nothing progressed. They spent like 5 minutes showing Raw recaps, and it was only an hour show. But yeah, I plan to make an episode on all that stuff. Like one episode I'll dedicate to that show, another one WWE's ECW and the original ECW, and then NXT that came after that, like the game show era. But and then there was TNA, and I wasn't the biggest fan of TNA. They had the six-sided ring, and that was something that I'd never seen before. But I didn't get that invested into the characters or into the product until Jeff Hardy came in. Because Jeff Hardy, through those early years I told you about, 2008, 2009, he was like my guy. My favorite WWE wrestler. To this day, Jeff Hardy's still one of my favorite wrestlers. I don't condone his personal life, but he's still one of my favorites to watch on the screen. But my earliest memory of Impact would be, this one stands out because, the no people in the arena thing, the empty arena match, Kurt Angle and Sting. I wasn't invested in storylines back then. Like, I didn't know that they were both a part of the same faction, the Main Event Mafia, wrestling each other, all that type of stuff. And then moving forward, it'd be like, Jeff Hardy coming in, Hulk Hogan coming in, changing the four-sided ring, which I said the six-sided ring was different. I don't mind a six-sided ring. I've heard some people liked it, some people didn't like it. It was a big change when they switched over. But I personally liked the six-sided ring. The Ultimate X matches, Immortal storyline. That was when I first started really getting into Impact. Like, I knew their storylines, I knew who everybody was. But fast forward to now, it's not the same company as it was in like 2009, 2010 era of Impact. It's still decent. Like, I still watch it, but it's really, really not the same. As far as that goes, I could, tell you guys more memories throughout the years, but I'm not going to do that. I just wanted to say what my earliest memories of watching wrestling was. And it was, like I said, with my grandpa, and Thursdays, Fridays. So I never seen Raw. Like, honestly, some people are going to laugh at me, but I didn't even know who John Cena, Randy Orton, I didn't even know that they existed. I didn't even know that Raw was a thing until like 2011, maybe late 2010. But yeah, go easy on me, guys. I was like 10, 11 at that time. I didn't care about the Raw recaps when they showed them, like on Superstars and SmackDown. I thought it was a video package. I wasn't invested in it. But after talking about all of that, I'm sure you guys want to know what this podcast is going to be about. It's going to be about wrestling, but as far as what companies, because that era, there was only those two companies, TNA, WWE. But now, 2023, we have a lot of wrestling companies. Too much wrestling for one person to watch. There's people out there that watch some wrestling, don't watch the other. They only watch certain companies. Some people watch everything. I don't know how they have time to watch everything, because I can't even watch every single wrestling company show that there is. I watch live product 5 nights a week, the Monday through Friday, 6 if you count pay-per-views on weekends, but I'm saying week to week, I watch 5 shows Monday through Friday. And I also, on my free time, I binge watch old wrestling. But I do like the standard. Like Mondays, I'll watch Raw, Tuesday, NXT, Wednesday, AEW Dynamite, Thursday, Impact, and then Friday, SmackDown and Rampage. Although I haven't really been watching Rampage lately. There's a lot of them that, I don't know, I'm just not that into lately. I wouldn't say I'm losing interest in wrestling, but there's a lot of wrestling shows out right now where I'm just like, alright, let's get to the point, let's pick the pace up here. Like AEW, for example. I've always been touch and go with them since they started. Like when they first started out, for the first 8 months maybe, 8 to 10 months, I was really invested. I watched everything they did. I watched who they signed. I watched their show. They only had Dynamite back then. When the pandemic first started, the show was still pretty decent, and then it fell down. And then even when they started first bringing fans back, I wasn't that into it. I didn't really hardcore get back into AEW until CM Punk came in August of 2021, I believe. Yeah, 2021 has to be by now. And then just like November of 22, which was like 4 months ago, 3-4 months ago, I haven't been as invested into the product, especially Rampage. Rampage hasn't been the same. Well, it's never really been a big show that they've had. It reminds me of, like I mentioned earlier, WWE Superstars, to where there's lower to mid-card talent are on there. Sometimes big guys appear on there, but storylines are not progressed. Nothing really happens on it, unless it's like one right before a pay-per-view, which they only have 4 of those a year. 5 if you count Forbidden Door, but I don't watch Forbidden Door because I'm not that into New Japan Pro Wrestling. Now, I'm not saying that I wouldn't like it if I didn't sit down and watch it. I just don't have the time to watch New Japan Pro Wrestling. I'm always willing to give any wrestling product a chance. Something I watched recently, NWA. I gave that a chance because I looked into it. There was a lot of people on there that I knew. So I said, alright, maybe I'll give this a chance. I gave it a go for a couple of weeks, and I wasn't, what's the word I'm looking for? Fond. I wasn't that fond of their product. I wasn't invested into it. The people that they were using, the storylines, I couldn't get into it. It was a disaster to me. I do know people who watch it, but hey, if they can watch it, more power to them. If they like it, I don't care. I don't judge whatever wrestling show people watch. I don't judge on it. That is a company that some people only watch NWA. I couldn't do that, but maybe I could, because I do know a lot of people there. Like I said, maybe if I didn't watch anything else wrestling related, focused on that, I could probably get into it. I could probably watch it. But another show I gave a chance to was Major League Wrestling. They currently air on Reel's network, I believe, on television, and they're still on YouTube. But I started watching it on YouTube, and I was like, okay, this might be something. And then now I just watch it when I have time. Like, I like it, but like I said, I don't have time to watch it. There's only so much content that you can intake in 1 week. And I'd say Raw's 3 hours, NXT's 2, 2, 2, 2, 1. I watch around 12 hours of live product a week. Add pay-per-views in there, depending on what company it is. It could be like 16 to 18 hours a week. Plus I watch, I'd say at least 4 to 5 hours of old wrestling content a day. Like, not a day, a week. Like on Peacock. Right now I'm currently binge watching WCW on there. But like the Monday Nitro and Thunder era, stuff like that. But long story short, I plan to do 1 to 2 episodes per week. We might go up to 3 depending on how popular this becomes. I want to get a set schedule like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or doing it twice a week. Maybe it would be like Monday, Friday, or Wednesday, Friday. Something like that is where I want to keep it around. But I don't want to make, like, I'll be making review episodes, not one for every single show. You know what I'm saying? I'll probably do for AEW, like Dynamite and Rampage together, instead of having separate shows for each of them. But I don't know how to work that out yet, because Dynamite is Wednesday, Rampage is Friday. So by doing that, if I stick with the Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule, then I won't get to that until Monday. And by then, we're getting ready for the next show. So that is outdated product. If you're not a huge wrestling fan and you're watching this, product becomes outdated very quickly in the wrestling world because of how many episodes and how much stuff happens per week. When a pay-per-view comes on, Saturdays is WWE right now, so I'll use them for an example. Saturday nights, it comes on. If you don't review that show sometime Sunday or Monday before 8 o'clock, that product, that show is outdated, because people are worried about the next show and what happens after that, and people won't, they might go back and watch it, so I'm not saying that they won't, but at that exact moment, if you review a pay-per-view that's on a Saturday, if you do it like a Tuesday, people are not going to sit there and listen to what you have to say for a show that happens Saturday when it's Tuesday. You know what I'm saying? But for those of you that know, you know. So I got to figure that out, like schedule-wise and that. Obviously, Raw and SmackDown will be covered on different podcasts because, Monday's Raw, Friday SmackDown. And I haven't decided on if I'm going to make an Impact review episode or if I'll just tie it into something, because I don't know if Impact's fan base is as big as it used to be. So I don't know if those eyeballs would get on my show that I'm looking for. But yeah, I'm willing to give everything a chance, every wrestling show. These first few episodes, though, I'm not going to review shows. I might say something here and there about what happened, but I want to get into what I thought of older wrestling shows that people didn't like. For example, I said earlier, WWE Superstars. I want to talk about what I thought of that show, what I liked, what I didn't like, and my overall thoughts of it. Same as ECW, same as NXT. Like, basically, I'm going to be getting you guys caught up on the product. Because I will get to a point where I talk about what I think of the current shows like Raw, Dynamite, SmackDown, Rampage, Impact, stuff like that. But also on this show, something that you will not get on any other podcast is I will go down the AEW roster and the WWE roster like alphabetical order and talk about that wrestler. For example, I believe on WWE's website, AJ Styles is the first wrestler listed in alphabetical order. So I'll look at him and I'll go, do I like the current storyline he's in? Do I like where he's currently placed? Should he be ranked higher, lower? Stuff like that. Like for example, P's are a long ways down the alphabet, but Peter Avalon in AEW, I had no idea he was still with the company, but he showed up last week. He has a match tonight. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I'm going to go down and discuss that stuff. But yeah, I know this podcast has been all over the place. Talked about this, went to that, went back to this. But like I said, it's my first time, so I got to get used to it. I also got to take notes about what I want to say and where I want to say it. Because I just went off the top of my head for this episode. I didn't plan nothing out. I didn't take notes. I didn't do bullet points. Nothing. So that's something that I want to definitely fix and work on for the next episode. As far as like reviewing current product and stuff like that, I want to do like a month. This first month of it, I'll go down and I'll talk about the old stuff, like I said, the old shows, my reviews, and then by WrestleMania, I want to start reviewing the shows by that time. And WrestleMania is like 32 days away or something like that, so there's time. But yeah, this has been the Straight Wrestling Podcast, episode number 1. I am your host, Original 123 Kid, and until next time, peace, I'm out.